What's up, everybody? Today I want to go over this bad boy. This is the Hardwire Electronics Pdm28. Hardwire has been around for a while. This is their new PDM. If you don't know what a PDM is, it's a power distribution module. So in your race car, street car, you've got a whole bunch of things that need power, like fans and fuel pumps and water pumps and headlights and taillights and turn signals and all that kind of stuff. So instead of having a ridiculously gaudy relays everywhere and terminal strips and all that stuff, you do it all through here. So we've been a dealer for Hardwire for about a year now. This thing just came out about a month ago, and I've been playing with it extensively. And I just kind of wanted to go over it with you guys so that you understood what it was. I also want to let you know that we have them for sale on our website. And if you have any questions, call us. We will have the keypads right here. There's multiple keypad options on the website here in the next few days. The keypad situation is a little bit more difficult to set up on the website. So let's talk about the PDM first. Okay, it's a Pdm28 because it has 28 outputs, all right? So if you look at the front of it, these are all Deutsch connectors, right? So we have 2 DTM connectors, 2 DT connectors, and 1 DTP connector. If you don't know what that means, easiest way to think about this is DTM, mini, right? DT, normal, DTP, plus size, right? So it goes based off of the terminal that you're using and what its rated amperage is, okay? So connector 1, 2 is your CAN bus stuff, your inputs. Connector 3, 4 is your 20 amp outputs. Connector 5 is your 30 amp outputs. So I just whipped this up to make life a little easier. These, if you buy a PDM from us, you'll get a hard copy of this so you can fill in the blanks, and then you'll also get this on a flash drive so that if you have Excel, you can modify it on Excel. So what I did here was like connector 3 is your outputs, right? So position, which is what position it is in the connector, right? And then the output, the type is output 1. So in the software, it'll be listed under output 1. Notice in the software, as we scroll, there's output 1, it's lit up in blue. All right, so there we go, output 1, right? You can put notes in there. But, and then we'll have its function. So just because it's output 1, this might be for like your water pump or your starter solenoid or something. Then I put a wire color here, first termination, and then a length. So this is the way we wire cars. We use sheets like this for the Dominator and for Smart Wire and for VPS and for now the Hardwire PDMs, for everything that we wire, right? So we use these sheets, we fill it in. I typically build all this stuff online or on the computer, then print it out, and then we start cutting wire, and we measure lengths, and then we cut wire and get to it. So let's go over how this works. You've got 16 inputs. So you've got, let me back up a little bit. The first thing is you have 2 separate CAN buses on the Pdm28. The Pdm25 and the Pdm15 only have 1 CAN bus. That's may or may not be important to some people, but CAN bus is a form of communication that uses 2 little wires right here, like this, right there. It talks to a keypad or maybe an ECU. For all you guys that are on my channel, you probably know that I'm a Holly guy. And yes, we have deciphered the CAN bus for Holly, and it is a service that we're going to offer with purchase of these things from us on setting your car up for CAN bus. We're also going to offer a flying lead harness with these, which means all of this would be populated with wire, and then you would get wire color designations here, and the functions would be empty, and then your first terminations would be empty, but the length would be filled in. And then what you would do is you would get your flying lead harness and you'd plug it in, and you'd have a whole bunch of wires coming off over here, and you'd pick, I want this one to go there, that one to go there, this one to go there, and then you terminate it. So we will be releasing a little package of a flying lead harness, all appropriately sized wire, all Tevzel, slant 32 wire. We will be using all solid barrel terminals, but that's in the future, right? So let's just talk about what we got here right now. So you've got 5 connectors across the front, 16 inputs, 2 CAN buses, okay? You have a LIN bus, and then you also have what they call NCAN, which is for their NIO modules for expansion that is not available yet, but will be in the future. But this thing's pretty robust and big. I don't think you really need to expand it. So you've got a couple inputs on here, your rest of your inputs on here. I think you have 4 inputs on connector 1. Let's go look. Connector 1, you got your enable switch, so that's the 12 volt to turn it on. LIN bus, CAN 2 low and high, CAN 1 low and high, and CAN low and high, and then your first 4 inputs. That's on connector 1. Connector 2, input 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever, the rest of your inputs. So you have 16 inputs. What that means is, think about switches in the car, right? So if you have like a neutral safety switch, if you have a reverse switch or a brake switch, whatever that may be, you have 16 inputs. The cool thing about this thing with the inputs is they can be either 12 volt, they can be ground, they can be 5 volt, they could be ranging voltage. There's a ton of different options with this, and when I get into programming this thing, we'll go into that a little bit more in depth. Otherwise, this video will be 2 hours long, and I want to do it in sections, okay? So there's your inputs, any type of switches in the car. Most people, I feel like, will put a keypad in the car. So let's just say like maybe this is your starter button. We program that to be momentary. Maybe this is your ignition. Maybe this is, marker light, headlight, high beam, left turn, right turn, whatever you want. These keypads have multiple functions per button. So there's up to 3 different states per button, okay? Which means if you press it once, it does one thing. You press it twice, it does another. You press it a 3rd time, it does something else. Press it a 4th time, it shuts off. You can program that inside the software. And again, in a later video, I'll show you how that's done. You'll pick your icons. So these little icons, they don't stick in, they actually like kind of clip in underneath of this little rubber seal. So you'll pick your icons. We're gonna come up with like a little, and this is one of the holdups for having these on the website, but we're gonna come up with like a little pack, basically like what we feel like is gonna be the most common things, and we'll include a list of them on the website so that like you just click one button, you get a keypad, you get however many of these that do a whole bunch of different stuff. And then if you wanted something different that's not in the list, you just send us an email and we'll be able to get them to you. So these are actually not like, they're a la carte, really. So like that's why I want to come up with a pack of them so you guys don't have to do as much work. We've sold a couple of these so far, and what the consensus has been is like, I don't know, you just pick. Just pick what you think I need. So that's what we're gonna do. Anyway, this is their 15-button keypad. This is their 10. Keypads are available in 4-button, right? So 4-button, 6-button, 8-button, 10-button, 12-button, so you'd have 2 more there. 15-button without dials, and 15-button with dials. These dials have 16 different positions and 3 different states per dial. So you get really wild with this. But so typically your inputs, you'll have a, like a brake switch, neutral safety switch, whatever it may be. Then one of your CAN buses will go to your keypad. And then your other CAN bus, if you deal with us, will go to your Holley ECU. It has to be programmed, so don't just message me and be like, hey, I bought this from Joe Blow. I need the Holley protocol so I can make it work. There's a lot of work that's involved to actually make it work, so understand that I'm just not gonna do this for everybody. So I'm not, not blanketly. Now, let's talk about outputs. So these outputs are rated at 20 amp, continuous. And what that means is they're telling you that you can run up to 20 amp draw per pin on here. In my opinion and in my experience, I highly do not recommend running 20 amp per pin on all 12 of these pins because you'll exceed the maximum capacity of the PDM. Now, with that said, I have wired a lot of cars, and I've wired a lot of drag and drive cars. And You do not need more than 200 continuous amps to run a drag and drive car. I mean, unless it's something extremely obscure. And if it is, we'll help you work through something else. So this, they're rated at 20 amp per pin. You won't be, if you use one pin for your starter motor, just think about it this way. If you use one pin for your starter solenoid, it's gonna draw like 8 to 12 amps for 3 seconds while you're hitting the starter. When you're driving, that pin's dead. It's doing nothing, right? Because the starter's not engaged. When you turn on a fan, say you use one of these 30 amps, right? Or you join two of these 30 amps or something, whatever. With this, you can PWM all of your outputs. So when you're cruising down the road, that fan that you think draws 60 amps really only draws 60 amps on inrush, but you can soft start this thing and it only draws like 5 amp, 7 amp, 10 amp, and it works its way up to say 30 amp continuous. So let us know if you need help trying to figure out how to do this. We'll put together in our, like when you buy one from us, you'll get this. You'll also get an example, right? It'll be an example from me of what I think is your most common stuff, and it should guide you along the way, right? So all these outputs, so this is something else that's really cool. All these outputs will send out 12 volt or ground. So people ask, why is that a thing? Why is that important, right? Because I just get the ground off the chassis, it doesn't really matter. So if you have power door locks, in order to lock the door, you send 12 volt and ground to the motor. And then if you want to unlock the door, you have to reverse the polarity. So you can set that up inside the software so you can drive your power door locks straight from this, okay? It will switch at a rate of 1,000 hertz. So if you look, all outputs on this connector are 1,000 hertz PWM, that's pulse width modulated, okay? All outputs on this connector are rated at 20 amp continuous, 12 volt or ground capable. So these outputs will put out 12 volt, they'll put out ground. All of these outputs can soft start, and that's basically like what we just talked about with the fan, right? So if your fan, instead of a big inrush of current, you can slowly ramp it up, right? All the outputs on connector 3, connector 4, and connector 5, all of your outputs can be soft started. All of your outputs can be PWM'd. All of your outputs, here's connector 4, right? Here's connector 5. All outputs on this connector, 1,000 hertz PWM. There's another little asterisk here where it says reverse current blocking, okay? What that means is if you had a low speed and high speed wiper motor, if you have low speed on say pin 1 and high speed on pin 2, when you turn it on to high speed, low speed is gonna see a higher voltage, right? So it would block that current. So if you wanted to do wipers, you just grab them off of one of these asterisks that's on my sheet here, right? And you don't have, here and here. So reverse current blocking is useful for like wiper motors or something that's gonna be variable. So 20 amp per pin, 30 amp per pin. Something else that's really cool. Rad lock connectors for main power and ground. Now, if you notice, most other PDMs really only have one big power lug. So you've probably figured out by now that this has got a big ground lug as well. Don't mind my gorilla hands. There we go. This has got a big ground lug as well, right? So the reason being is that we can send ground out of all of these. So if you wanted to send power and ground out of this thing to control everything in the car, you could. I mean, you'd run out of outputs pretty quick, but you could. If you wanted to switch polarity on stuff, over and over, you could. And that's the reason for the need for the large gauge wire for ground, okay? Rad lock connector is pretty sweet. These rad lock connectors will accept up to 1 gauge, I believe 1 gauge, or 0 gauge, I'm sorry. They use a pretty standard hydraulic crimper. So like they're like hand squeeze operated. You can find those crimpers, sorry about that, I don't know what happened to my phone here, or my camera here. You can find those crimpers at like Temco, Industrial, or Harbor Freight even sells them. So anyway, crimp these, you know, go to your contactor here for this maybe, or go directly to battery, whatever you got going on in your car. Another cool thing about this thing is that you can program this from your laptop without having any power hooked up to this. So if you wanted to program this entire unit, you can without having any power hooked up to it. You put it in the car, it's already programmed. So anyway, last but not least, we've got indicator lights. So power, then you've got NCAN, CAN bus 1, if it's green it means it's good, CAN bus 2, if it's red it's bad, over temp, LIN bus. Now you've got all your outputs, right? So if you look from left there, that's all of your outputs. It'll tell you green is good, blue, red. There's a bunch of different indicators for it. And then all of your inputs. So this is an easy, quick way to spot check if your input is working or if your output is on or whatnot, or if you have an error with it. So pretty sweet. I'll go into depth about programming and you know, setup, as well as I'll go over our, I'll make a couple videos. I'm gonna make a couple videos on this because my personal opinion, I think that this thing is going to get a lot more people involved in the PDM world because one, the software is pretty easy, I think at least. Two, it's a very capable unit. And three, it's reasonably priced. So this is the way this comes with all your connectors, right? Stamped and form pins, which our flying lead harness would have solid barrel contacts, but stamped and form pins, USB cable, a little cover for the USB cable, and your rad lock connectors. Comes with a very in-depth, nice, thick sheet manual, right? Teaches you how to do all types of stuff with it. This is one of those things that I suggest you read. And it also comes with a flash drive from, come on, focus. There we go, from Hardwire, right there, from Hardwire Electronics. So, which on that flash drive will have their, let's see, I've got it on my computer open. Well, if you get it from us, it'll come with all this. Right there, USB drive. It'll come with their instruction manuals, software for the PDM10, 15, 25, and 25 plus, and separate software for PDM28. And then here is our Excel sheet, which would have our blank pin map. Then you'd also have an additional one that says Hardwire PDM28 example pin map. So we've got a few of these in stock. I plan to stock a bunch of these. I feel as if these are going to be a pretty hot item, I believe, once people realize how capable they are. Keypad pricing is under 400 bucks, right? So like the 15 button with dials is the most expensive one. I think it's 370, 380. Don't quote me exactly, right? And then it goes down in price as you remove buttons. So the smaller they are, the cheaper they are. Anyway, hopefully this answers some questions about this thing. I will get to work on programming videos with this here shortly. See ya.